this black stone, this object of paganism, but for the fact that I saw Muhammad doing it. So early Muslims, even one of the rightly guided caliphs, recognize this object is associated with paganism. There's no way I'm going to go over there and kiss it the way the pagans are doing it. I'm not going to adopt this pagan practice, but I have to, because according to Surah 33:21, Muhammad is the example that all Muslims should follow. Therefore, if Muhammad is kissing this object of pagan idolatry, just the way the pagans were doing, then I'm going to do it too. And Muslims to this day, when they visit Mecca, will do everything they can to get close enough to the black stone to kiss it. Why? Because Muhammad did. Why did Muhammad do it? Because he grew up in the Quraysh tribe, and that was what they did. That's what the pagans of Mecca did. This seemed very natural to them, and now it's a part of Islam. So again, Muslims, what do you do? What do you do when you're pointing a finger at Christianity saying it's been corrupted by paganism, and it hasn't, and yet when we turn to your religion and we look at almost every single practice you have, almost every single practice in your religion comes directly from the pagans. How can this not bother you? How can this not bother you? If I had a practice that was part of my religion and I immediately saw, oh, wait a minute, this was a pagan practice that was adopted by someone in my religion, I would be horrified. I would be horrified. And in Islam, it's not just one, it's not two, it's not three, it's not four, it's not five. It's almost everything you do as part of your religion was a pagan practice or a pagan belief. How can this not bother you? I don't know.
Okay, I have another question. It could be a kind of compromise with Muhammad and the tribe of Quraysh to make that reconciliation that they kept the Kaaba, and if there is anything has to do with the moon or the crescent, that there was people are worshipping that god of the moon or those eras.
Before we get into the moon god, whether Allah was a moon god, I just want to understand your question. Are you asking that Muhammad compromised with them?
No, yes.
Is what he's asking?
Yeah. Because he made a reconciliation with his tribe when he came back, and they
when he conquered
this
them?
big sheet, and they tried to, maybe he said, okay, I'm going to keep this Kaaba, but let's clean it up and
I don't think
clean
it's
it for the new God.
I don't think he did it because he was trying to compromise with them. Because
man, we're gonna have a debate on screen here.
well, no, because if you let me finish my point,
okay.
I thought you were on my side, but you see, this is what happens when it's live. Because he had them under his control, he had already subjugated them. So if the purpose was to compromise, to appease them, well, at this point in time, he has the power, and he subjugated them, and they're under his control. I actually think it's because he grew up steeped in these practices, and that he adopted as part of his religion. So I'm sure Dave's going to say that to compromise and to bring them in union with him, but he had already controlled them, subjugated them, and dominated them at the point that you're talking about. Because you're saying when he came and he wanted to appease them, well, even before that, he's already observing these practices. And the reason why I say it's significant for this so-called prophet of monotheism, for him to be running around the Kaaba at a time in which there are still 360 idols, is that there's this tradition. Now, I don't believe this tradition is true historically, but it's reported in the Muslim sources. The same Ibn Ishaq reports that the Jews were telling the king of, the Yemeni king, the king of the Yemenites, that this Kaaba supposedly was erected by their father Abraham. Now, I don't believe this episode happened. Be that as it may, it's recorded in this source that Muslims believe contains reliable tradition. Not completely reliable, they'll question some of the traditions. But I want to read the part that's significant in showing that the Jews, if this is a true report, that the Jews were more conscious of the worship of the one God than Muhammad himself. And here's why. I'm just going to read it so you can see why it's so significant that what Muhammad did was a violation of monotheism, because Muslims keep saying that Islam is the purest form of monotheism and worship should be given to Allah alone. You shouldn't mix it with paganism. But let's see what the Jews told, or supposedly told, the Yemeni king. Let me read this. This comes from The Life of Muhammad, translation of Sirat Rasulullah, and in the English translation it's pages 8 to 9. It says, they, the rabbis, told that the sole object of the tribe was to destroy him and his army, talking about the tribe in Mecca. We know of no other temple in the land, this is the Jews supposedly saying this, which God has chosen for himself, that's, said they, and if you do what they suggest, you and all your men will perish. The king asked them what he should do when he got there, and they told him to do what the people of Mecca did. Circumambulate the temple, run around the temple, to venerate and honor it, to shave his head, and to behave with all humility until he had left its precincts. Then the king asked, and a very smart question, by the way. The king asked why they didn't do likewise. Okay, the Jews are telling the king, when you get to Mecca, don't destroy it. Run around the Kaaba, honor its customs, because this is a house of God, supposedly. So then the king asked these Jews, okay, then why don't you do it? If you believe this is the house of God, it was erected by your father Abraham, how come you don't go there and honor the customs and run around it? Now notice the response given by the Jews. They replied that it was indeed the temple of their father Abraham, but the idols which the inhabitants had set up around it and the blood which they shed there presented an insuperable obstacle. They are unclean polytheists, they said, or words to that effect. The Jews refused to run around the Kaaba because there were idols still at the Kaaba at this time. And yet I just read a tradition that said Muhammad ran around the Kaaba when there were still 360 idols around it. So how can you say that Muhammad brought the purest form of monotheism when we see that early in his career he had no reticence running around the Kaaba littered with idols? So again, and then maybe Dave, you want to comment on what he was saying, his question.
I wanted to comment on the compromise. Actually, Sam and I aren't too much in disagreement. We're thinking of compromise in two different senses.
That's right.
Sam was thinking of compromise as, hey, I want to make a compromise with these guys to end this dispute between us. I was thinking of compromise just in the sense that Muhammad had a desire, a deep down desire, to win these people over, and that this influenced the revelations that he believed he was receiving from God. Because we know, if we know anything about Muhammad, we know that he was influenced by his desires. When he wanted more than 4 wives, he got a revelation saying he could have more than 4 wives. When he wanted to sleep with his slave girl, and he gave an oath to his wives saying that he wouldn't sleep with his slave girl, he got a revelation from God telling him, go ahead, you can violate this oath to your own wives. When Muhammad wanted the wife of his own adopted son, he got a revelation saying, okay, you can have her. Over and over and over again, Muhammad had a desire, and then this desire would be satisfied by a revelation. And in the next program, we're going to be talking about something that's even more closely related with the satanic verses. The entire the source of the satanic verses is that Muhammad desired that the pagans of Mecca, specifically the Quraysh, would join his religion, would submit to Islam. And he longed for a revelation from God that would bring these people to Islam. And then he got the revelation that would do this. It was a revelation promoting the gods of the pagans, Allat, Alus, and Manat. So Muhammad desired reconciliation with his people so much that it affected the revelations he was getting. So later on, when Muhammad is praying towards Jerusalem, and this is offending his pagan kinsmen, it's not difficult to see how this person who wants reconciliation with these pagan kinsmen who are offended that he's praying towards Jerusalem would say, oh, actually, no, God has changed the direction of prayer, and now we are to pray facing the Kaaba, just like all you pagans whom I was offending by facing Jerusalem. So it's not that Muhammad sits down and says, all right, what can I do? What can I do here? How can I make things right between us, and how can I make this less difficult for them? It's that Muhammad has a desire for reconciliation with them, and Muhammad's desires, as we know from all the Muslim sources, Muhammad's desires often influence his revelations. And if that offends you, if you think I'm wrong, I would just invite you to trust Aisha. If you don't trust me, surely if you're at least a Sunni Muslim, you would trust Aisha, the source of so many narrations about Muhammad, who said, after Muhammad received one of these revelations that satisfied his desires, Aisha said, your Lord hastens to satisfy your wishes and desires. Aisha noticed this over a period of years, that every time Muhammad wants something, a revelation comes down saying, oh, of course you can have that, Muhammad. You want the wife of your own adopted son? No problem, you get her. You want more wives than you told everyone else they're allowed to have? No problem, you get them. Anything you want, Muhammad, you get. And when we understand that Muhammad's, according to Aisha, not according to me, according to Aisha, Muhammad's revelations were influenced by his desires. And when we understand that, and we understand that Muhammad had a desire to reconcile with the pagans of Mecca and to bring them into Islam, it's certainly not surprising that he would adopt all the practices of Islam and that these would all get Allah's stamp of approval. After all, Allah put his stamp of approval on all of Muhammad's desires.
All right, I have another question for you guys till we get the phone calls working here. Christianity, we would like to be connected to Abraham. The Judaism, we are the sons of Abraham. And Islam says, yes, also we are the sons of Abraham. And is there any documentary that says that Abraham went to the Arabian Peninsula, and this was the place that God told him to build a temple for his son there in that area, the Kaaba area?
No. Short answer is no.
No, not
no
a shred.
pre-Islamic evidence. No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, and you know, this is something that's very interesting. According to what Muslims believe and what Muslims tell us, you know, there was a line of descendants from Ishmael. You know, it's just like the descendants through Isaac that ultimately became the Jews. And think about this though. The Jews are there. They're in a community. They refuse to compromise with paganism. Whenever they do compromise with paganism, God punishes them until they come back immediately to belief in the one true God. God is always in a clear relationship with the Jews, and ultimately the Messiah comes to the Jews. So there's always a link. They have the genealogies. They can always trace who's related to whom, who goes back to Abraham, and so on. Muslims don't have a shred of evidence, that Muhammad's connected with Ishmael. They don't have any genealogies. They don't have any evidence that they're related to Abraham. They have none of this. So why is that? Why is it that the Jewish community that comes through Isaac kept careful records of everything, was very careful to document their genealogies, knew who was related to who, so that they could trace the lineage of Jesus, they could trace the lineage of all kinds of people, of David, of everyone. And we get to Islam, and you show me a genealogy of Muhammad that goes back to Ishmael. You have no evidence. It's what we find in Islam is Muhammad takes all these pagan practices and says, oh, Abraham did it, and I'm a descendant of Abraham. Well, do you have any evidence for that? Well, I'm a prophet. Well, and anything else, Muhammad? Because that's what we're wondering. We're wondering if you're a prophet. And based on what you're telling us, everything you seem to be adopting, as far as your practices are concerned, is a pagan practice. So you can't just say, well, Abraham. Again, imagine this. Imagine you came to some culture. Let's say 15th century Japanese culture. And in 15th century Japanese culture, a prophet arises and says, I'm a true prophet. And you say, why are you trying to get everyone to agree with you and say that 15th century Japanese culture is the culture that everyone else has to adopt? Well, I'm a descendant of Abraham. You got any evidence for it? No, I don't have any evidence, but I'm a prophet. Well, yeah, if we believe you're a prophet, then we would have to say, okay, we have to believe what you say. But if your prophethood is in question, if that's what we're trying to figure out, then you saying you're a descendant of Abraham and yet having all these pagan practices, that weighs against you. So the only evidence we have right now, until Muslims show good proof that Muhammad was a prophet of God, all the evidence we have is against him, because the only thing we know about these practices historically is that they were pagan practices. So until Muslims come up with clear proof that they go back to Abraham, we can only assume that these are pagan practices and that therefore Muhammad was not a true prophet, because a true prophet is not going to compromise with the pagan practices of polytheistic Mecca.
All right.
I just want, would you have a call?
No, I have another comment.
Before you ask a question, I just want to add what Brother David said. As far as Christians are concerned, even Jews who are committed to the authority of the Scriptures, we cannot accept Muhammad is a son of Ishmael because of the following reason. According to the Islamic sources, specifically...
This was going to be my next...
what was it going to be?
Abraham is Chaldean. Hagar, the son of the mother of Ishmael, is Egyptian. So there is any Arabic blood there.
Well, Muslims say that Ishmael wasn't a native Arab. He he spoke Arabic. So that opens another can of worms, especially if he said he's Chaldean.
But his
I don't want to get into...
tomb is southern Israel, like a little bit of northern Saudi Arabia.
Abraham?
Ishmael himself, when he was buried, yes.
Okay, well, I didn't know that, but... He's got new archaeological discoveries.
No, that's the
Praise the Lord for this guy.
Stuff.
Isn't he amazing? Let me come back to the point where we can be certain. I don't want to go into areas where we're not certain, and I don't want to debate issues that are gray. I want to deal with black and white. According to the Scriptures, if you go to Genesis 21:21, it says that Ishmael settled in the wilderness of Paran. Genesis 21:21 clearly tells us where Ishmael settled. If you get any good Bible map, you'll note that the wilderness of Paran is located around Egypt and Shur, around Israel. It's not in Mecca. That's clear. Just get any Bible map, you'll see that. Not only that, Genesis 21:21 goes on to say that Hagar, his mother, went and got Ishmael an Egyptian bride. She went to